I have never been much of a collector, but as the demand for classic physical media increases, I've been starting to get my hands on things I like or am intrigued by. This one, Resident Evil, the book, caught my attention specifically because it was so hard to find any information about it other than transcripts. A lot of content creators have discussed it already, so you can find out some information about its contents online among other Resident Evil enthusiasts. I wanted to know what the book actually looked like in the real world, what the paper quality felt like, what contents were inside. So I went to eBay and I found one, and now I can show you what it looks like. As always, spoilers ahead. I like to get an idea of things before I buy them, so think of this video as a little display of the item in case you're interested in finding one. I wanted to make the video I couldn't find myself. One thing I was immediately struck by was the quality of the book. The cover has a glossy finish. The feel of the pages is really nice, specifically the paperweight. The art is from the classic illustrations, so opening this book was like jumping into a time machine. It's also really small. It could easily fit into a pocket if you didn't mind damaging it. I'm going to keep mine tucked away safely with other valuable books. Each chapter introduction features these really cool classic illustrations on black pages. This prequel novel was written by Hiroyuki Origa and was delivered as a promotional item to coincide with the release of the original game on the Sega Saturn. I believe it's essentially a translated version of a chunk of text that was lifted from another book called Biohazard, the true story behind Biohazard. This novella also features a foreword with Shinji Mikami, in which he discusses some of the development of the original game. It's really cool. The novella functions as a sort of what-if scenario and behaves as a prequel to the first game, but it has some inconsistencies that don't allow it to fit with the rest of the series in any canon way. For example, the STARS members are aware of the threat of both Umbrella and zombies far before they arrive at the Spencer Mansion. Some elements fit neatly into S.D. Perry's novelization of the first entry, and I thought that was pretty cool too. The book really leans into the investigation and mystery elements, specifically through Chris and a first-person perspective. It reads more like a detective thriller than a horror narrative. I thought maybe it would just be cool to pick one thing to talk about from each chapter that contributes to the lore, even if it doesn't fit neatly. Let's jump in. Actually, the word strange doesn't half fit these killings. Something sinister was at work here, some force beyond a simple human murderer. I've been putting in 18-hour days looking for answers, but so far the only thanks I've gotten is a boot in the tail from the media. They keep insisting the police aren't working hard enough on the case. I like this setup because, as I always try to emphasize, Resident Evil truly starts off as a murder mystery. This book adds some context though. Chris has more of a personal connection to the conspiracy that he'll soon discover. 10 years before, Raccoon City had been a sleepy farming community and the mayor was kind of a glorified dog catcher. But then the Umbrella Company moved in and built a large research plant, and suddenly there were new faces and new buildings all over the place. Before anyone knew what was happening, almost half the population of Raccoon City was directly dependent on the Umbrella Company for their livelihood. Suddenly the mayor's job was a plum to be squeezed, a position of power from which a crafty politician might line his own pockets. As the population swelled, crime had also increased. It got so bad that the company proposed establishing a special crime-fighting force, paid for in half with corporate funds. The city had agreed, and STARS was formed. What a wonderful setup. It ties not only the city's growth to Umbrella, but also Irons and the STARS team. The heroes are on the villain's payroll. Jill loved kids, and they loved her back. Several of her daring escapades as a member of STARS had made the local TV news, and thousands of youngsters now looked upon her as their heroine. Then the trill of a young girl's laugh echoed from below, and I suddenly remembered why Jill was so upset. Her neighbor's children, two young girls Jill had become a second mother to, had been among the beast's first victims. They'd been on a camping trip with their parents when they'd wandered into the nearby woods. When their parents found them an hour later, they were already dead, their bodies horribly mangled. This adds motivation to Jill's character that's absent from the game but present in Perry's novelization. I've always thought this element gave Jill some good backstory. I wonder, if Resident Evil was remade yet again, would some of this lore be incorporated into the beginning of the game? I needed more information on Billy than I had, and I figured I'd pay a surprise visit to the Umbrella Company, sort of beat the business bushes, and see what things came scurrying out. As I was driving along the loop road leading to the company complex, I began reviewing what I knew about the company. First, they seemed unusually generous when it came to funding new municipal building projects. Raccoon City boasted wide, palm tree-lined streets, modern schools, a state-of-the-art hospital, and a brand new city hall. Normally, a city of only 300,000 wouldn't have the tax base to pay for all these amenities, but the umbrella company, with its tentacles and everything, had insisted on helping finance citizen services. The company complex appeared around a bend in the road, and I slowed the Shelby to get a better look. The most imposing structure was Umbrella's 20-story corporate headquarters. Its brick-colored walls rose in geometric patterns that gave the structure a menacing appearance, as if the building housed a cruel and unforgiving host. This was my favorite chapter. I love that Chris does some actual investigation, and his characterization here is sly and fun. It also fleshes out Umbrella's role in city planning, and that is fully realized in both Resident Evil 2 and 3. We never actually visit the Umbrella corporate building in the games. Wouldn't that have been cool? I also love that they used the line about tentacles, chef's kiss. A coworker took Rose's place and we left the bakery. "Where have you been hiding?" she said as we walked slowly down the sidewalk toward my parked Shelby. "I haven't seen you since Billy died." This one's short and sweet. It features Chris going to speak to Rose about Billy. She thinks he's dead, but as is custom with Resident Evil, nothing is ever as it appears. So why is Wesker so ticked? He's got several reasons, actually. Numero uno, the chief's on his back demanding an explanation of where you went right after the murders. You haven't explained that one to anyone yet, including me. What's the second reason? Apparently the human resources manager at Umbrella called Brian to complain about your unannounced visit. Naturally, you hadn't gone through channels, and naturally Brian went ballistic. In this scene, Jill and Chris share a car ride to find his friend Billy. What I like about it is that readers wouldn't have yet known Wesker and Irons' roles within Umbrella if they hadn't played the game, so it adds to the conspiracy elements. Wesker and Irons can't have Chris snooping around, can they? Billy gurgled deep in his throat, and I knew it wouldn't be long. "The secret research you were doing, Billy, it's connected to the zombies, isn't it?" He nodded his head weakly. "We were forced to develop virus," Jill said. "What kind of virus?" "T-virus. Changes humans into zombies." The blood was running from his mouth like a river now. "Billy, you've got to tell us. How do we stop these things?" Can't stop." A last breath escaped from Billy's lungs and his body went limp. I looked down at my childhood friend for a long, terrible moment, then bent and closed his staring eyes. I can see why this was never canon. For Jill and Chris to find out early what was really going on would have diminished the impact it has for the player discovering it in the game. It's still a cool scene and features a zombie attack much like we'd become familiar with as the series progressed. Wesker led me across the room to a wall map of Raccoon City. An array of colored pins formed a rough circle around a neighborhood in the northwest part of the city. "Each of those pins represents a murder scene," he said. I nodded, recognizing the locations from my investigation. "You notice the pins surround a specific area, almost like a target with a bullseye." I studied the map. The pins seemed to circle a plot of land with a large structure in the center. "What's that building in the middle there?" "It's the old city guest house, sitting in the center of the murder scenes like it does. It seemed logical that the killer or killers might be hiding out there. So about 3 hours ago, I sent Bravo team in to investigate." Wesker ran a frustrated hand through his hair. "They never came back out, not one of them." I like this scene because it demonstrated how the characters wound up at the mansion in the first place. Understanding the attack patterns led them to deduce what the locations had in common like true investigators would. Interestingly, it also mixes up the roles of Bravo and Alpha team members. If you're interested in a physical copy, there's currently some on eBay right now, but they go for high prices. I also bought these cool postcards along with it that feature some of the classic illustrations in color, though I don't plan on sending them to anyone. Hopefully this video will give you a better idea of what you're buying if you find a copy, because I had no idea. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up or comment, share it with your friends or survival horror fans. Be sure to check out my videos on the original 3 entries in the trilogy. I'll be back with more soon. Be nice to each other in the comments. Thanks for watching.